Welcome to the fourth and last module in this unit on reading. We hope that Module 3 on text structure and note making has convinced you of the impact reading has on making you do better, not just in the English language, but in learning across the curriculum.
In this module, we are going to help you discover a few more characteristics of a good reader. An effective reader is one who can read what is not explicitly written or stated by the author, and who can also examine the tone, mood, or purpose of a text.
One more thing, a good reader can examine a text, ask questions, and make meaning. So by the end of this unit, you will be able to understand what we mean by critical thinking,
apply the key features of the critical approach to reading,
and evaluate information using critical thinking.
You mentioned that a good reader asks questions. Does that mean that one talks to the text?
Absolutely. If there is one fact that can be a takeaway from this unit, it is that reading is an interactive process. You cannot take a text and expect the meaning, main point, and ideas to come leaping out of the printed page. What you have to do is ask questions, keep talking, make meaning, and create connections.
So what you're saying is that critical readers interact with the text. They read, they work hard in order to create such meaning.
Yes, they ask questions of the author, test every assertion, fact, or idea, and extend the text by adding their own understanding of the subject and personal experiences.
That means becoming a critical reader is not easy. It requires a lot of practice and patience. It doesn't happen overnight, but the effort is worth it.
Did you know that by becoming a more critical and active reader, you will also become a better writer?
More importantly, you will enjoy reading and writing a lot more because you will become actively involved in both. So we've now given you some very good reasons to become critical readers.
If there could be a theme song for this module, I would say that it would be called Reading is a Cognitive, Interactive Process.
And the chorus that we would chant is, let's actively engage with the text.
So let's begin the process of learning to read critically with very simple examples. Everyone thought that Horace Denby was a good, honest citizen.
This is the first sentence of a story by Victor Canning. What is the writer talking about?
A man called Horace Denby?
What other information do we have?
That he was a good, honest citizen.
Does the writer believe that he was a good, honest person? Can you find a word that reveals what the writer actually thinks?
Well, he uses this phrase, everyone thought.
Why is the writer using that word?
I think it is because the writer is trying to say that what people thought was very different from what he, the writer, knew about Horace Denby.
Yes, people had an opinion, but the facts were something else. What does he know? Reading the text further will give you that information.
In this example, the questions were framed and placed before you. When you read, dear students, you need to ask these questions yourself and try to find the answers.
Here's the first tip in today's unit for you. A very important factor to keep in mind while reading actively is examining the tone, mood, and purpose of a text. Let's begin by discussing what we mean by tone.
When people speak, their tone of voice can reveal a lot about their attitude, towards a subject. Similarly, when people write, their voice can express a wide range of tones or feelings such as anger, amusement, optimism, sorrow, and excitement.
The tone of a piece of writing is the author's attitude toward a subject as reflected in the choice of words and details. It depends on their audience, the subject matter, and purpose. Learning to recognize the tone of a piece of writing is essential to understanding and evaluating the idea an author is trying to convey. The author may be optimistic, cheerful, cynical, sorrowful, or humorous.
Take a minute to look at the quotes in Learn Task 4.1 in your worksheet. Let's identify the tone in each of these quotes. How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. This is a quote from Anne Frank.
And given what we know about Anne Frank and her circumstances during the war, we know that it is filled with hope and optimism.
Let's look at the second quote. Two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the universe.
We all know that the famous scientist Albert Einstein is expressing his humor in this quote.
Now go to Do Task 4.1 in your worksheet. Look at the text there and identify the tone. Write down what helped you to do so.
Here's tip number 2. Remember that you can identify the tone by noting the point and the choice of words by the writer.
Now that we have discussed tone, let's move on to mood.
Mood refers to the atmosphere, state of mind a text leaves you with. It indicates in a literary work the prevailing feeling, especially at the start of a play, a poem, or a novel. It creates a sense of expectation about what is to follow and leaves you either feeling gloomy, romantic, realistic, light-hearted, or cheerful.
Look at the extracts in Learn Task 4.2 in your worksheet. Let's identify the tone in each of these. She stretched herself up on tiptoe and peeped over the edge of the mushroom, and her eyes immediately met those of a large caterpillar that was sitting on the top with its arms folded, quietly smoking a long hookah and taking not the smallest notice of her or anything else.
The first one is from a popular novel, Alice in Wonderland, by Lewis Carroll. The mood is one of lightheartedness and intrigue.
Now let's look at the second extract.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may tread me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise.
The mood in this extract from the poem Still I Rise by Maya Angelou is one that is uplifting, optimistic, and filled with resolve. Please complete Do Task 4.2 in your worksheet.
This active way of reading is critical reading. It is much more complex than reading. It is going beyond the process of interpreting the message of the text. It is analyzing and evaluating the text. Critical reading means applying processes, models, questions, and theories that result in enhanced clarity and comprehension.
Let's move now to the second part of this unit, where we try to understand the process of critical reading. I found this very interesting infographic that captures the essence of critical reading. Let's look at it together. What are the questions that a critical thinker asks while reading a text? The first question would be, what's happening? Gather the basic information and begin to think of questions. The second, why is it important? Ask yourself why it's significant and whether or not you agree.
Also ask yourself, what don't I see? Is there anything important missing? How do I know? Ask yourself where the information came from and how it was constructed.
Who is saying it? What's the position of the speaker and what is influencing them? That would be the next question that you should be asking. And finally, what else? What if? What other ideas exist and are there other possibilities? If you keep asking yourself these questions and ask these questions of the text, then you are on the way to becoming a critical reader.
Exactly. Let's read one more text. Look at Learn Task 4.3 in your worksheet. Ghulam didn't make a move. We took a bus to Kabul and went to the courthouse yesterday, he said flatly. Guess what the judge told us? He said he had bad news. He said there was an accident, a small fire. My father's ownership documents burned in it, gone, destroyed. Adil slowly dropped the hand holding the jacket. And as he's telling us that there's nothing he can do now without the papers, do you know what he has on his wrist? A brand new gold watch he wasn't wearing the last time my father saw him. Adil blinked. What is happening? What does Ghulam report?
Well, he says that the judge says that he has bad news and there has been an accident, actually a small fire in which the documents had been burnt.
How does Adil feel upon hearing this report? Is there any evidence in the text?
I think there are two words that give us a clue as to how Adil feels, and in my opinion, I think he is absolutely shocked. One clue that tells us that is the fact that his hand dropped slowly to his side, and the second is that he blinked.
And the jacket that he was holding fell. He
Fell
dropped
from
the
his-
jacket.
What is the writer's point?
What does the writer say to support the point? What does this make you think about? Does this remind you about something? What do you want to find out?
Now work out Do Task 4.3 on your own.
We must remember that any text, however well written, does not contain a determined meaning. A reader has to make this meaning based on experience, education, and even emotion to bear on the text in order to better understand their meanings.
A reader needs to work hard to create meaning from every text. Texts contain surface meaning and subtext. One must think of the bigger picture and the setting.
Critical readers interact with the texts that they read by questioning them and responding to them.
Critical readers actively search for related texts to place these works in conversation with each other to advance important ideas. Think of how subjects from your other courses and experiences connect to what you are reading.
While reading academic texts, one needs to be able to judge unfair writing, a piece of writing that uses unfair methods to force you to have a certain opinion. Be watchful for information that leaves out or alters facts. Look out for words used for emotional effect, such as nerd, liberal, racist.
Let's look at an example. Read this sentence. Your skin's like a mocha latte.
Using words like chocolate or coffee or any other food related word to describe someone's skin color, especially someone of color, is offensive because of the link with the slave trade. Cocoa and coffee drove the slave trade. So comparing a black character to these foodstuff is offensive.
Also look out for words that have special connotations. For example, weird versus eccentric, clever versus devious, and notorious versus famous.
Because in each pair, one is a positive word and the other is a negative word.
So let's look at an example. On Washington's San Juan Island, a historical park harks back to a notorious 1859 border dispute when the British and the Americans almost went to war over a pig. Socrates is one of history's most renowned personalities for his contribution to the creation of ancient Greek philosophy, which served as the basis for all Western philosophy.
In these two sentences, you have synonyms like notorious and renowned used. But in the first sentence, remember that something is known for dispute and discord. So therefore, notorious, which has a negative connotation, is used. But in the second sentence, when you talk about Socrates and his contribution, the synonym renowned is used, which has a positive connotation.
Watch out when the writer uses a famous person's name with an idea or a product.
Deepika says that most girls use fake smiles in ads as most regular pads are scratchy and itchy. Use Nua's scratch-free and toxin-free pads. Or Kajol says that Knorr soups are a quick fix for mothers who want to feed hungry kids with non-boring food.
Watch out when the writer quotes a famous person.
The famous star chef says that butter is a great substitute for ghee. Modern slavery is a growing challenge thanks to a mix of armed conflict, climate change, and the global pandemic, a new UN report says.
Be careful when the writer says that everyone is doing something.
Everyone in love with the handloom and our country's skill and art falls in love with e-tokery in no time. All people who can afford it can buy cars with power steering.
Look out when only general statements are used instead of specific facts while using positive words.
Every student loves this stunning, efficient and safe bike. Add spark and sunshine to your campus life. Ride this glamorous Speedy.
Beautify your home with our wide range of decor products and paints.
Be alert when a writer presents only facts that tend to make you agree with them.
There's nothing wrong with smoking. Everyone in my family smokes, and they usually live beyond their 80s.
Electric cars are commonly spotted on roads around the United States and Europe, and they will soon replace fueled cars.
Watch out when a writer uses negative terms to refer to a person or a product.
Only an idiot like Revi will campaign for him. How can he be a valedictorian when he rambles like a madman?
In the city of Kashgar lived a barber who was a great talker. Once when the Sultan called the barber to shave his head, the barber started talking non-stop instead of shaving him.
You will notice here that barbers are portrayed as people who talk incessantly and cannot keep secrets.
Now read this excerpt from a book. One morning, I paused before the Catholic fellow's desk. I want to ask you a favor, I whispered to him. What is it? I want to read. I can't get books from the library. I wonder if you'd let me use your card. He looked at me suspiciously. My card is full most of the time, he said. I see, I said, and waited, posing my question silently. You're not trying to get me into trouble, are you, boy? He asked, staring at me. Oh, no, sir. What book do you want? A book by H.L. Mencken. Which one? I don't know. Has he written more than one? He has written several. I didn't know that. What makes you want to read Mencken? Oh, I just saw his name in the newspaper, I said. It's good of you to want to read, he said, but you ought to read the right things. I said nothing. Would he want to supervise my reading? Let me think, he said, till I figure out something. I turned from him and he called me back. He stared at me quizzically. Richard, don't mention this to other white men, he said. I understand, I said. I won't say a word. A few days later, he called me to him. I've got a card in my wife's name, he said. Here's mine. Thank you, sir. Do you think you can manage it? I'll manage fine, I said. If they suspect you, you'll get in trouble, he said. I'll write the same kind of notes to the library that you wrote when you sent me for books, I told him. I'll sign your name. He laughed. Go ahead, let me see what you get, he said.
That afternoon, I addressed myself to forging a note. Now, what were the names of books written by H.L. Mencken? I did not know any of them. I finally wrote what I thought would be a foolproof note. Dear Madam, will you please let this nigger boy, I used the word nigger to make the librarian feel that I could not possibly be the author of the note, have some books by H.L. Mencken? I forged the white man's name.
What are the questions that you should ask in order to be a critical reader? Put them down.
Here are our list of questions. Who are these people? What can you guess about the background of this text? What is the story about? What does the narrator want? Why is this not such an easy task? What characteristics do you like in these people? How would you have told the story differently if given the opportunity? Have these questions matched your set of questions?
Well, I think if our students have put down at least some, if not all of these questions, they're well on their way to becoming critical readers. We've also got for you a list of questions that you should begin to ask as you read in order to be critical readers. And to help you, we've grouped them under different headings.
Questions about the overall text. What is the purpose or aim of this text? How do you know? How might this influence the way it is written?
Can you see any justification, implied or direct, for the research decisions? Do the justifications seem reasonable?
Questions about the truth claims made within the text.
Are any assumptions being made in this text? These assumptions might include something that is important or possible, might influence you, something that is positive or something that is negative.
Do these assumptions seem reasonable in this context? Why or why not?
Are any generalizations being made? Are these generalizations reasonable here?
Do any claims seem too certain?
Are there suitable examples?
Are there claims which are based on authority for support? What kind of authority is it? Does this seem reasonable?
Are there claims which are based on evidence for support? What kind of evidence is it? And does this evidence seem reasonable?
Are any concepts being conflated?
Questions about how the text could be different.
What is missing from the text?
How could the text be not like this or different?
Is anything being used out of context in the text?
Another section is political questions.
Is there anything problematic in the text?
Are any groups being excluded or marginalized in the text or in the implications of the claims?
Is there any exclusionary language used in the text?
What would be the implications if we were to take the claims seriously? That is, what would happen next?
Questions related to personal engagement.
How does this text relate to my personal experience?
How does my personal knowledge and experience affect the way I read the text?
Can my personal experience help me to evaluate the claims?
What status does my personal experience have in relation to the published research?
Can I find anything in the literature to help me relate this to my personal experience?
Use these questions as guidelines to critically examine texts from now on.
In this module, we have learned how to become critical readers, readers who actively make meaning from a text and engage with the text. Do remember,
read once, read again to try to understand what's going on in a text.
write points, make notes while you read, and have a conversation with the text. It keeps your brain active while you read. It clarifies questions.
Ask questions. It seems like a simple suggestion, but if you never ask questions, you'll never get any answers.
We have included tasks for you to work on that will help you become critical readers. Links to online sources have also been included in your worksheets.
We hope you have enjoyed this unit on reading. Keep reading and keep engaging actively with different kinds of texts.